All right, if I have to marry a guy, I now know who it will be, and I'll tell you when we kick this show off. But we have far more important things to discuss, like money in politics and the rally and lobby day that's kicking off at the state capitol tomorrow. At the same time, or just before the governor's speech, we're also going to talk in this program with Phil Rader with the Des Moines Public School District about a variety and a range of education issues.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Ed Fallon here, folks. Gateway Market and Cafe is your locally owned source for specialty groceries. Enjoy chef-crafted, prepared foods, artisan baked goods, organic produce, specialty cheeses, and hand-selected wines and craft beer. Visit the lively cafe for breakfast, lunch, or dinner 7 days a week. Gateway Market is centrally located on the corner of Martin Luther King Jr. Parkway and Woodland Ave. Stop by or visit www.gatewaymarket.com for more details. That's Gateway Market, folks. Good food, great community.
Hello, Mid-American Energy.
I'm very concerned that you want to bill me an extra $5,000 to build a nuclear reactor. Do you know we're in the middle of a recession?
Oh, we were hoping you wouldn't hear about that until after the legislature had taken action.
Why not let your shareholders pick up the tab?
Oh, way too risky for our shareholders. We need you, our loyal customers, to pay for it.
Wait, let me see if I understand this. Mid-American wants to build a nuclear power plant in 10 or 20 years, and they want me to pay for it now?
That's right.
Well, I'll just take my business elsewhere.
Sorry, we're a monopoly. What we say goes.
I've heard nuclear power is more expensive than other sources.
Yes it is.
And I've heard there's no plan for how to dispose of nuclear waste.
We're looking at shooting it into the sun.
Well, I'm not going to sit back and let you make bad decisions with my money.
We're betting you will.
Stop Mid-American's power grab. Call your legislators today. 281-3371. 281-3371.
Paid for by Physicians for Social Responsibility.
Located in the heart of Beaverdale, Tally's offers speedy and affordable rooftop lunch, catering for events both large and small, innovative cuisine, as well as vegetarian and gluten-free menus. Come to Tally's for live music, dry-aged steaks, Sunday brunch, and all-you-can-eat ribs every Monday night. Tally's Restaurant, Bar, and Catering at 2712 Beaver Avenue. Call 279-2067. That's 279-2067.
It's time to think about upgrading the efficiency of your furnace and air conditioner. Leonard Tinker Heating and Cooling has provided honest, competent service for over 20 years. Whether it's your home or business, for repair work or to install a more energy-efficient furnace or air conditioner, call Leonard Tinker at 263-0422. That's 263-0422. For honest, competent heating and cooling service, call Leonard Tinker at 263-0422.
I love driving to Newton to see the races.
Me too, but I only have to drive across town.
You live in Newton?
Yep, Newton's got small town charm and it's close to Des Moines. I love the safe, friendly neighborhoods and family-owned businesses. And Newton's wind energy industry is really taking off.
How'd you find your home?
Dan Kelly with First Choice Realty. And Dan helped me find my office too.
Next time, instead of just speeding by, I'll stop in and check out Newton.
Why don't you check out Newton? Call Dan Kelly at 641-521-9260 or Dan Kelly at mchsi.com.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Welcome to the Fallon Forum, everyone. Thanks to Sierra Club and the Iowa chapter of Physicians for Social Responsibility for helping to sponsor this program, and also Gateway Market for sponsoring this segment of our show. If you want to join the conversation at any point, you're always welcome to do that. This is an open forum. It's 244-0077, 244-0077. And please check out my website for information you might not always find on the show. I hope to have some new videos up there soon. I also want to thank Lee Camp and all the others who came and joined in the comedy show last night. The lawsuits are no laughing matter. I very much appreciated the turnout, and again, Lee Camp does a fantastic job. This is his first show in Iowa. I'm confident it will not be his last show. Also, folks, a reminder that starting this week on Wednesdays at 4 o'clock, you can hear the Fallon Forum on KHOI 89.1. KHOI is out of Ames. That's 89.1. And you can hear that every Wednesday at 4 o'clock. I also want to thank Brother Trucker for kicking off the show and Andy Fleming for kicking off the Lawsuits comedy show last night at House of Bricks. Okay, so we're going to talk money and politics. We're going to talk about the legislative agenda as it ought to be, and about a big event coming up tomorrow, an annual event that just it seems to get bigger every year because the problem doesn't get any worse or doesn't get any better. But first, I got to tell you, I promise I tell you, if I had to marry a guy, folks, I'm absolutely sure it would be this guy right here. And I'm even starting to sport some of the same facial hair that Tom Brady has, among others, has popularized. But I mean, the guy's phenomenal. I mean, come on, who can stop this guy? No, not Denver. No, not Baltimore. We'll find out about this coming week. But I'm just going to say, folks, we'll see him in the Super Bowl, and we'll see you there as well. All right, so on to more important things. I know what is more important than football, right? All right, money in politics is really more important than football because it affects every single aspect of politics. And I remember as a state legislator, I mean, I never took any PAC money. There's only two other legislators, I think, that don't take any PAC money. And it's hard to do that because you're getting so much pressure. And, it used to be that you couldn't give a legislator anything worth more than $3 in value. And then they changed that to say you could offer food and drink and whatnot of more than $3 in value if you invited the general public. And true story, I started inviting the homeless and the poor. The general public started showing up and enjoying the largesse of lobbyists. And needless to say, they changed that. So now all you have to do is invite all 150 legislators. So you can still keep the poor and the homeless out. As long as you get all 150 legislators an invitation, then you can wine and dine them up the wazoo, as was one such event last year for, over $100,000. Lawmakers have been wined and dined to the tune of $1 million in the course of 3 years. That's a heck of a lot of money. And, of course, we saw a huge push to get lobbyists giving to political campaigns, giving to candidates, rather, up through last night. I mean, one thing competing for attendance at my Lawsuits comedy show was all these different candidate events trying to wine and dine lobbyists. Adam Mason's with me in the studio. There's no organization in Iowa that has done a more persistent job at calling attention to money in politics than Iowa CCI. Adam, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Ed. Good to be here.
Does it turn your stomach a little bit to see all this story about all these lobbying events at the last minute?
Yeah, it really does. But it's just so symbolic of our politics here in Iowa and nationally. I think that all too often our elected officials are listening to big business and well-moneyed interests.
Yeah, and again, there's certainly not to make any confusion about this. There are some really, really wonderful people serving in elected office in Iowa and elsewhere. But gosh, look at the leadership. A year ago, Mike Gronstall raised just under $30,000 on January 8th. One day. Now, what was the significance of January 8th? It was the day before the session started. So all these lobbyists were, cashing in their access, their influence just before the deadline. $30,000. Not to be outdone, the Republican leader in the House raised $21,000 4 days before the start of last year's legislative session.
That's right. And that really leads to a situation where the rest of the session, everyday folks across the state are left wondering, who are they working for? Are they working for me, or are they working for the lobbyists that wrote those checks?
Yeah. And you notice, too, that while rank-and-file lawmakers get some, the big dogs and gals get the most.
That's right. It sets up a situation really where then those leaders can dole out that money come campaign season. And then once elected, rank and file legislators owe their support back to the majority leaders.
Yeah. And especially those who live in marginal districts or who have had tough races, who feel that they would not have been elected without the financial input from lawmakers. I mean, here's a good example. If you look at in the Des Moines Register today, again, compliments to the Register for doing a good story on this. Jason Noble, the journalist, they list one lobbyist apparently put a whole bunch of these events on his website. I mean, I doubt this is a comprehensive list, but just yesterday there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 big lobbying fundraiser events. And the one that caught my attention, and again, this is bipartisan. This is a problem on both sides of the aisle. You've got something called the Truman Fund. The Truman Fund is a fund specifically created by the the House Democratic leadership to funnel money into the pockets of Kevin McCarthy, who then funnels it, as you said, Adam, back out into the lawmakers that they really want to have that money for their campaign, but also to solidify their position of power. This event called for hosts at the $2,500 level, sponsors at the $1,000 level, a friend at the $500 level, and a supporter at the $250 level. You could do that, or you can go hear one of the best comedian activists in the country, Lee Camp, for $10. So I don't know. You know, if you've only got $10 to spare, as more people do, I mean, the folks who got the $2.5 grand, a grand, $500, come on. That's not you and me, Adam. That's not the average person who's involved with CCI because they care about family farms or about housing.
That's exactly right. And so, you know, these legislators might be going home on the weekends and now that the session's in session, so that they can hear from their constituents. But it still raises that really big question of who are they working for? If the day before the legislative session starts, the week before the session starts, they're out there fundraising in the thousands of dollars. These aren't the constituents at home that are writing the $25 checks. These are lobbyists who have a clear-cut mission to get their legislation passed.
Yeah, and your organization has a very good opinion piece in today's paper that I think lays out what some of Governor Branstad's priorities should be. Of course, some of these priorities are contrary to what his financial supporters want and what some of the legislative leadership's financial supporters want. But they are, I think, a good list of priorities that I would guess most Iowans, Democrat, Republican, Independent alike, could get behind.
That's right. They're very simple, very populist, progressive policies that we want to see passed. Our legislative agenda reflects our membership, which is everyday folks from across the state. Folks who want local control over factory farms. They want to see strong regulations cracking down on factory farm polluters. They believe that everybody should get paid for doing honest work. Unfortunately, you know, wage theft in Iowa robs families of over $600 million.
Yeah. Now, that's a really interesting one, too, because there's not really a strong lobby supporting wage theft.
No.
You know, but there are corporations or in some cases individuals who benefit from the lack of any law enforcement on their ability to steal wages from their workers. And again, people don't know how much that is. It's a huge amount of money. What, $600 million a year?
That's right, $600 million a year, and that would contribute at least $60 million immediately back into local economies. So this is something, you know, that's hurting our local economies. It's hurting workers, everyday folks across the state, usually lower income folks who need it the most.
Yeah.
You know, and if I had to point to one lobby that is against that, it's the lobby of business groups, typically like the Association of Business and Industry, who are just opposed to regulation on the whole.
Yeah, but I mean, good business people don't do this. They don't agree to pay somebody and then refuse to do so.
That's right. That's exactly right.
It's a handful of bad corporate citizens that are doing this.
That's right.
Yeah. So it's hard to see why anyone would object to cracking down on people who are breaking the law or treating their employees but in a way that you would never treat anybody.
That's right. I agree with you 100%, Ed. Unfortunately, once the session starts, things don't work quite that way.
Okay, and the specific thing you want to see done on this is to hire more wage theft inspectors through the Iowa Workforce Development.
That's right. Currently, there's one inspector. So, you know, if you file a wage theft claim or basically any wage claim with Iowa Workforce Development, you could be waiting months, even a year, because of the backlog of cases on file there.
So state government has perhaps intentionally underfunded the number of wage theft investigators needed.
That's correct.
Is there a proposal likely to come forth? Is there a bill being drafted that would appropriate the money for the necessary number of investigators?
Yes, there is, and we'll be pushing that through through the budget subcommittees, labor budget subcommittees, so that we hopefully secure more funding. Also, the bill that would crack down on wage theft, actually, those fines on businesses that engage in wage theft, that money would go right back into hiring more investigators.
Okay, and this is a priority of the labor movement too, I presume.
Yes, it is.
And so they might. I'm going to assume this might have some traction in the Senate.
Yes, it will. It actually passed the Senate last year, but was unable to even get a subcommittee hearing in the House last year.
And has Governor Branstad taken a position on it?
He has not.
Okay, well, that's interesting that he hasn't.
Yes.
My guess was that he'd already come out against it.
Not vocally, no.
Yeah, all right. So, excuse me. So I mean, in terms of some of the other priorities, you mentioned factory farms.
Sure.
What are you looking at doing on that?
It's a huge one for our base. Our members across the state, again, people of all priorities, Republicans, Democrats, independents, folks across Iowa overwhelmingly don't like factory farms. So they want local control, the ability to say yes or no when a factory farm wants to move in their community. We also want to see stronger permitting standards. Right now, a factory farm can build just about a quarter of a mile from your house. We want to double that distance and lower the permitting threshold so that, smaller factory farms have to apply for permits as well.
Now, Democrats used to champion that issue.
That's correct. A number of governors have ran and won on that issue. Governor Vilsack did. It was a major issue during the 2006 campaign cycle. Unfortunately, when Democrats took control after 2006, nothing happened on the issue.
Yeah, and there's plenty of blame to go around. But again, it probably gets back to what we were talking about earlier: money in politics.
That's right.
Farm Bureau and other very deep-pocketed moneyed interests, are good about it. They go where the power is.
That's right.
And if you're the one calling the shots on what happens on an issue, that money's gonna follow you.
That's right, and we've seen this instance play out over and over. Whether it's the EPA work plan to come into compliance with the Clean Water Act, the nutrient reduction strategy that the Farm Bureau took the last 2 years drafting for the DNR, or legislative inaction on these very important issues across rural Iowa. The Farm Bureau has too much clout because of their financial impact.
Now, in your list of priorities, you also talk about the need to save some of our surplus for a rainy day fund. Now, that's fiscal, sometimes described as being fiscally conservative, or at least at a minimum fiscally responsible. And it's what lawmakers sometimes run for office on. It's a position that I think people could agree across the board is also a good idea. You want to have a cushion. You want to have something in reserve in case of a flood or other kind of disaster or a significant economic downturn.
That's right. Iowa has been able to weather the storm in the last 4 to 5 years, since 2008, the financial crisis. We've been able to weather the storm better than most states, and that's why we're looking at this surplus now. That's partially because we've taken cuts to vital public services, and partially because our revenues are coming in higher. We need to keep raising more revenue by closing corporate tax loopholes, but also start reinvesting in some of those public services that took a hit over the last couple of years.
Now, you mentioned combined reporting, which is an issue that is designed to glaze over people's eyes, but folks don't. I mean, this is basically if we instituted combined reporting in this state, as some states have done, you would see. And I've heard $40 million additional revenue every year into the Treasury. You're saying as much as 100, I believe.
As much as $100 million.
And again, this would be companies, just big corporations, Toys R Us, Walmart, big realtors, companies that have their headquarters elsewhere. And, if they were headquartered here and paying taxes like other local companies headquartered in Iowa, they'd be paying a lot more. And to make it fair and comparable for those local businesses, it sure makes a lot of sense to institute combined reporting.
Exactly.
It's hard for me to imagine where the opposition to this comes from.
I don't know either, but there certainly is a big opposition to it amongst the business and industry groups and Governor Branstad.
To me, it shows that their real allegiance is not to. They talk about their support for business, but it's really not. It's really not business across the board that they support. It's big business.
That's exactly right.
If they really wanted to do their part for little businesses, for smaller, locally owned businesses, they'd march ahead on combined reporting in no time at all.
Right. This would totally level the playing field. I mean, like you said, Walmart, Toys R Us, those big box stores, they're all exploiting our tax code. You and I both pay our taxes. A lot of local businesses, they're all paying their taxes. But because of tax loopholes, those big box stores are shipping their profits out of state so they don't have to pay any tax on them.
Well, you've got your work cut out for you. I'll say that, and you know that.
Yes, we do.
But again, a great piece in the paper today, both the editorial by your organization, but also the article by Jason Noble about money and politics. It ties it all together pretty well.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So, I look at this and I think, what planet are some of these people from? This is State Representative Tom Sands. Quote: "There isn't anything wrong about these events. If there was something, there'd be something wrong with fundraising in its entirety." Well, what? Wait. I'm trying to figure out the logic of that. Okay, so there's no logic. I'm struggling to even come up with any gem of intelligence in that comment. Sorry, Tom. No sense at all. And then another state legislator, Walt Rogers, describes this kind of schmoozing by lobbyists just before the start of session. He described these events as opportunities to interact with the lobbyists and interest groups and help drive the discussion at the Capitol. Okay, interact. And first of all, the fact that the lobbyists and interest groups are the ones driving the discussion at the Capitol, I mean, that's a huge red flag right there. And then what exactly is meant by interact? But this isn't just, hi, how you doing? What's happening? What are you working on? This is, I'd like a check for $500, $1,000, $2,500. Now let's hear what you're working on.
Right.
This is obviously this is quid pro quo.
Exactly.
With the taxpayers and the average citizen being left out in the dark on it.
That's right. I mean, how many everyday folks across Iowa, folks that are out there listening right now, do you have your own personal lobbyist? I doubt it. And so for them to quote, that this helps them get things done at the Capitol by interacting like this with lobbyists, well, we just have to look and see who has more lobbyists and who's funding these kinds of shindigs.
Yeah.
It's big business. It's corporate interests.
So tomorrow, big event.
Yes.
We have the governor speaking at 10 o'clock tomorrow. And prior to that, Iowa CCI is encouraging folks who care about the issues you've mentioned, factory farms, the fair tax code, about doing more for the public services that have been cut because of the budget crisis we had.
Right. Basically, if you believe in good government, we want you there tomorrow. We're going to be kicking it off at 9 o'clock at the Capitol on the first floor rotunda. Governor Branstad gives his State of the State speech at 10 a.m., and then at 11 o'clock, we'll issue our money out, people in address that basically tells the condition of everyday Iowans.
And where will that be?
That'll be also on the first floor rotunda. You can't miss us.
Okay. What time will that be?
At 11.
Okay. So you rally at 9, governor speaks at 10, the Iowa CCI and citizen response at 11.
Exactly.
Okay. How many people, and you've been doing this for years now.
Yes. Well,
a decade or more.
Oh, yeah.
A couple decades.
On this day of the State of the State, yes, we have.
I mean, I think you might have been doing it somewhere early in my tenure in the State House.
That sounds right.
All right. So it's been maybe closer to 20, 25 years. All right.
That's right. We're expecting hundreds of Iowans, again, from all across the state. If you go to our website, iowacci.org, you can find information. We'll have buses coming from the Dubuque area all the way across on 20, stopping in Waterloo and at I-35. Coming from the Quad Cities and Iowa City area, and as well as Western Iowa from the Carroll area and Ames area.
Great. And I like the way you phrase it again. The question isn't big government versus small government. The question is, who does government work for?
That's right. And we believe, for some silly reason, we believe that government should work for everyday folks, not for wealthy donors and contributors.
That would make you very, very silly indeed. Anyway, no, that's the way it should be. And I'm going to talk more about Richard Doak's great piece in the Sunday paper yesterday. But we are going to talk. We're going to switch gears here soon and talk education with Phil Rader. I do want to thank Gateway Market for sponsoring this segment of our show. Gateway is located at 20th and Woodland in the Sherman Hill neighborhood. And again, not just a grocery store, but a deli as well, a cafe as well. You can have breakfast, lunch, supper. Again, a great catering service as well. Maybe even Iowa CCI uses Gateway for some of its catered events. I don't know.
We do.
Yeah. Well, they're there. And again, keep your money local, folks. Don't squander it at a Whole Foods or Trader Joe's or Walmart for the life of Pete. We've got a local business owned by local people who keep that money circulating in the economy. So check them out, folks. Gateway Market at 20th and Woodland, just on the edge of downtown Des Moines. I want to thank Webcast One Live for providing the studio in the skywalk across from Palmer's Deli. And we're going to go to a break here, and the commercials you will hear during this break are Webcast One's sponsors. We'll be back in a few minutes.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
The dawn of a new era begins.
Well, good morning. This is the 7th of June in the Lord's year 2010, and this is day 1 of webcast1live.com. We will begin with Max World Live with my special guest, Tom Coates. In just a minute, there's Tom. Wait. Howdy. And we will be live for the very first time on Webcast One Live. Someday we're going to look back on this and say, gosh, remember that old day in history? Wonder where Walter Cronkite was. He must have been around hanging there too. But actually, it's the beginning of Webcast One Live. And thank you for listening. Thanks, Rob Spearman, and everybody who's put together this project together. And we're ready to go live now. So thanks for listening to MaxWorldLive.com.
I can't tell you that it's going real well from time to time, but it is going, man.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Welcome back to the conversation, everyone. This is the Fallon Forum here, broadcast live on Webcast One Live in the Skywalk. There's a lot to talk about here. I got Phil Rader in the studio. I want to mention one thing before we go to him. Again, I've had a lot of respect for Richard Doak. He was a longtime reporter at the Des Moines Register, went on to become the editorial board editor, and minces no words. And I think he describes... He throws out an idea that I think we ought to talk something about. The Republican Party should become the country's progressive party, he says. Now, people would say, whoa, I mean, that party is so far from anything resembling progressive. How can you say such a thing? He makes a really important distinction. Not the liberal party, because liberal and progressive are not synonymous. And I've been saying that for years. And he goes on to encapsulate that distinction pretty well, I think. Let Democrats have the liberal party that focuses on government solutions for most problems. A progressive party would have a somewhat different focus. It would advance reforms intended to let the public work its will against the oppression of both big government and big business. It would be the champion of ordinary people in a democracy. I like what he's saying. There's historical precedent. There's a lot to think about on this. We'll talk more about that over the course of the next couple of weeks. Phil Rader is in the studio with me. Phil is the spokesperson for the Des Moines Public School District.
Yeah, that's a good enough title.
Good enough?
Yes.
Okay.
Good to be with you, Ed.
All right. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Come
My
a little
pleasure.
bit closer to the mic there.
Okay, how's that?
That's perfect. And folks, if you'd like to talk with us at any time, you're always welcome. It's 244-0077, 244-0077, or toll-free 855-244-0077. Phil, so the Des Moines School District, again, you're probably paying close attention to what happens today at the State House. This is the kickoff of the legislative session. There's talk of education being a priority. What do you think of some of the things you've heard so far?
Yeah, it's always a big issue, as you know from your years up there, for good or bad. It always gets a lot of attention. I know the governor this morning just came out with his proposal. And obviously there's some things, it's still early, as a lot can change from day one to the final gavel. There's some things, quite frankly, in the governor's proposal that might lead to some encouragement in terms of trying to provide greater support to teachers. We have a lot of great teachers in the district and across the state. But one of the things we focused on at the district level here in Des Moines, and it seems like maybe this discussion has now gone to the state level, is ways to provide greater support to new teachers and ways to encourage good teachers to stay in schools that need extra help. We did that this year, actually last year now, with the new alternative contract that we have in Des Moines for our teachers. And it seems like that discussion is being engaged somewhat at the state level. The flip side, though, is it seems like the governor does not want to talk about funding, and it's difficult to talk about improvements. It's difficult to talk about reforms if you don't talk about the resources to get that job done.
So what in his proposal specifically appeals to you regarding teachers?
Well, one of the things is providing better mentoring for teachers. A lot of times teachers will be in their classroom, do their work, and be somewhat isolated in that regards. And we see not just in Des Moines, but across the country, a lot of times with newer, younger teachers that come into the profession, that that might be frustrating to them. They might not get the support they think they need, and leave the profession altogether. We don't want that to happen. For somebody that's dedicated to making their career in education, we, whether it's a school district, whether it's the state of Iowa, need to find ways to provide support so that they can grow in their profession, because at the end of the day, how well they do their job is how well our kids end up doing in school.
So mentoring more for teachers who are just getting started.
Exactly.
The first year, 3 years, 5 years, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And
And I can give you an example of
sure.
what we do in Des Moines. Like I mentioned, we just created a new alternative contract starting the school year for dedicated towards new teachers, which starts them out a slightly higher salary. They agree to spend at least 5 years at a school so that there's a consistency at that school for those students with the teachers that are there working with them day in and day out. In return, we provide the teachers with a greater mentoring system, more professional development, more support from their peers who have experience in the profession. And over the course of time, we've actually set up an interesting thing with this new contract where after 6 years in this, these new teachers will actually receive a master's degree free of charge because of that extra work that they've done to build their own professional capabilities in the classroom.
And again, part of the appeal is a slightly higher starting salary than they would get if they weren't part of this program.
Yeah, that's part of the appeal. But with that, of course, comes a little bit more responsibility, which is putting in some extra time, extra work to build their capabilities in the profession.
And has that gone well so far?
It's been a good reaction. It's year one, and it's only geared towards those teachers who are new to the district. So I think this year, give or take a little bit, I think we've had about 70 teachers out of 2,700 that have signed up. But of course, that's just one year of new teachers.
Any resentment on the part of the teachers who've been there a while, maybe even since last year, and missed the opportunity?
You know, resentment might be too strong of a word, but I think what there is, and it's actually something we're looking at, is, okay, this is good for new teachers. How can we apply this to veterans teachers? And that's actually something we're looking at expanding. Okay.
When you say the governor is not proposing any real funding to help with with teacher quality, what I mean, we're looking at. I mean, I guess the biggest issue on the table when it comes to education finance is always allowable growth.
Sure.
And where maybe give people a sense of where we're at. I know there's been multiple year commitments made, and where we're at today with that.
Sure. Well, there's been, of course, over the last decade, there have been several across the board cuts. Some of them, a couple of times, that have come in the middle. The school year, which puts that much more of a burden on a school district. So,
and you know, I've been a Culver critic, but I think, on all fairness, that's something Culver probably had to do, given the budget constraints that he was facing in the middle of his term.
Exactly. I don't think anybody's arguing that cuts had to be made. That
Except
it was
for Branstad,
a tough time
in the campaign.
But that's another debate.
Right.
But over the last 10, 12 years now, there have been multiple across the board cuts. The Urban Education Network, which is an organization we belong to, it represents the largest districts.
8 largest districts, maybe?
Actually, it's been expanded in recent years. It started off as the 8 largest, and over the last couple of years, the group's expanded to include other growing districts. So some of the suburban districts, some of the other larger districts in the state.
For example.
Waukee is an example. But some of the larger districts in Iowa. You look at the yellow splotches on an Iowa map, and more of those districts are now a part of the UEN, and it represents now, I think, a majority. The students in Iowa go to a UEN district, even though it's only 18 districts out of 360 or so that we have in the state. But they've calculated that if you were to make up the cuts that have been made over the last decade or so that districts are still addressing, still facing, even though we've had a couple of okay years now, that would require 16% allowable growth. Now, you know, Ed, from your time up there, 16% allowable growth is not.
When Vilsack was governor and I was in the House, we were pushing hard for 6%.
Mm-hmm.
Democrats seem to be content to push for 4%, Republicans for 2%, and they settled on 3%. But I mean, anything more than 6 was even 6 was considered a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, we made the argument that there have been so many cuts over the years that teachers were no longer able to afford to provide the supplies that they needed, the basic supplies. Utility bills had risen well beyond the capacity of a school to pay them.
Healthcare insurance costs
for employees.
Of course,
sure.
That's in fact one of our biggest. When you look at the budget from year to year, that's one of the biggest increases that we and other districts face. But that 16% figure at least kind of gives you a perspective of the makeup, the ground that districts need to make up just to get back to where they were. In terms of funding.
So has Governor Branstad announced a level of allowable growth he's interested in?
He's not. As I understand, what he discussed today is that funding would not be discussed until some of the reform proposals that he's made are moving along.
That seems, that seems like cart before the horse to me.
And maybe not even a cart or horse. I mean, one of the two may be
wrong metaphor altogether.
It could be, but it is. I just, regardless of what people may end up thinking about some of the reform proposals, it's hard to have that discussion unless you're also not having a discussion about how do we support these reforms.
Folks, if you'd like to join the conversation with Phil Rader, the communications director with the Des Moines Public Schools, I just gave you a different title.
Keep it up. We'll
keep
see
it up.
What,
all right.
We'll see what I am
we'll
at the end of the show.
244-0077 or toll free. It's 855-244-0077. Wide open to discuss any educational issue you'd like to throw on the table. I do want to reference this poll that was out in the paper last week. This is a Gallup survey indicating that the longer students remain in school, the less engaged they are. Okay, some cynics might argue that, well, in that case, let's just do away with high school. Now, I mean, what does that mean? I
think maybe what and I saw that last week in the paper as well. I think maybe one thing it indicates is just kind of the change in where students get their information today. It's not all sitting at a desk with a book open in front of them. And so the notion that students today learn only, between the four walls of a classroom is pretty outdated. And I think you're seeing that slowly but surely. I mean, change in education oftentimes is like, changing an ocean liner in the middle of the Atlantic. It can take a wide turn to get there. But I think there's a big discussion right now in education. Actually, to Jason Glass's credit, the state education director, he's a big proponent of online learning. I think I think everyone's still trying to figure out what's this going to look like down the road. But I think it acknowledges really students just get more and more information from more and more sources than you and I did when,
we
were in school.
I'm certainly that way too. I mean, I never used a phone book. I don't have an encyclopedia.
Yeah.
There are so many resources you can get online. I understand that. I mean, the poll, again, poll aside, your comment about, I think online learning is important. And it does, I think it's very possible that we can and maybe are beginning to go too far on that. When you turn the entire, basically the entire education of a student over to an online, quote, school, I think there are some major issues. And that's starting to happen. You've got a couple of very creative, clever, smaller school districts that are basically enrolling students from anywhere in the state in their online program. And the online program is managed by a private corporation that basically gets that full, $6,000 annual appropriation per student. I mean, that restructures the entire approach to education in a way that I think a lot of us are uncomfortable with.
Well, and I think by us, I think you'd be talking about us too. I think a school district like Des Moines would have concerns about that. We expressed them last year. Luckily, the brakes got put on some discussion that would have expanded this potentially even further. But the flip side is that's not to say that school districts, whether it's a large district like Des Moines or smaller districts across the state themselves, can't do more online to benefit their own resident students. We have to. There's no
absolutely,
and we've done a lot of that in Des Moines. You look at North High School now as a good example, the largest high school in the state. That's a one-to-one laptop learning school. Every student there gets assigned a laptop when they check in for the start of the school year. But you're absolutely right. Where you draw that line, who implements the education curriculum, is it a public school district or is it a private company? That's a very, very important debate.
Yeah, and the legislature did draw the line. I can't. Was it 90 students? How many is it?
I'd have to go back and look.
But there's a cap on the number of students statewide that are allowed to open enroll into this private corporation online program. Right. I'm curious. Do you happen to know how many students from the Des Moines district have enrolled in that?
I don't. We do have open enrollment in and out of the district, and that would something like that be considered open enrollment out, right. Of course. But I don't have an exact breakup. We haven't anecdotally. I can say we have not seen or heard much of that from our students. Some of our students, for whatever reasons, will go to surrounding districts, but I think here, especially in a larger district, there's enough resources for students that are interested in a variety of things that the online option might not make the most sense if they were going to leave the district.
Right. Well, folks, we're talking with Phil Rader. He'll be with us till the top of the hour. You're welcome to join the conversation at 244-0077. I want to bring up a few hot button items, too, including the controversy over Martin Luther King Day, this being Martin Luther King Day, and there being some concern about what the appropriate thing to do with that day is in case of a snow day being needed. Also, there's ongoing discussion about the open meetings aspect of the whole fallout of the Nancy Sebring thing. I don't want to dwell too much on that, but there's some questions that have been brought up. And also, I know you're in the middle of a search for a new superintendent.
We are.
And again, maybe we'll tie up our conversation about the legislature, too, because we're just starting that conversation, and there may be other things that you think people should be paying attention to as we go forward. So, folks, we'll be back in a few minutes. I do want to thank Reynolds Energy Solutions for sponsoring this segment of our show. An energy audit. Good idea, Phil, if you haven't had one. Mid-American will come in and do a quickie. Tim will do a very, very thorough audit that will cost you nothing. It will almost certainly identify ways you can save money and save energy. Go to bed at night with a little bit more money in your pocket, if you sleep with money in your pocket, but also knowing that your carbon footprint is a bit lower. So give Tim a shout at 802-2801. That's 802-2801. We'll be back in a minute.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Hey folks, it's Ed Fallon. I want to tell you about saving energy and saving money. Tim Reynolds with Reynolds Energy Solutions will give you a comprehensive energy audit that will cost you nothing. And Tim will identify the many ways in which you can reduce energy use while saving money. Now, I had Tim over for an audit last month, and I was amazed, I tell you, at how much energy was going through the roof, out the windows, the back door. You get it. So before the cold winds of winter really blow hard, give Tim a call at 802-2801. That's 802-2801.
I'm a burrito.
I'm a fighting burrito, full of fresh ingredients prepared before your very eyes.
I don't have eyes.
I have over 28 options and 268 million combinations, including Rizo for vegetarians.
I can take my meat off and call myself vegetarian.
Put that back on. The Fighting Burrito is locally owned.
I'm owned by some big corporation somewhere. Say, you want to go on a date?
No thanks. I'm seeing a quesadilla.
The Fighting Burrito online, fightingburrito.com. Join the fight.
Times are tough, and most people are just trying to make their cars last a little bit longer. That's why you should know about Sargent's Garage in Des Moines. You can trust Sargent's to make the right diagnosis and give you a fair price. Whether it's a routine oil change or a major repair, Sargent's always does outstanding work. So don't give up on that old car just yet. Call Sargent's Garage at 246-8149. That's 246-8149 for Sargent's Garage.
Ludwig van Beethoven here. I used to be so tired all the time, not from composing and playing, but from moving my piano. But now I feel so much better. I call S&P Piano, and they will bring my piano anywhere. They also sell and rent pianos, used ones, new ones. You get the idea.
Call S&P Piano right away at 208-6453. That's 208-6453.
S&P Piano.
Nestled in the heart of downtown, Ritual Cafe is one of Des Moines' most unique places, offering a wide variety of coffee and tea. Ritual Cafe also serves the only all-vegetarian menu in town. And Ritual Cafe is a cultural hub for artists and musicians, with a performance stage hosting local, national, and international talent. Make Ritual Cafe a part of your daily ritual. On 13th Street between Locust and Grand in downtown Des Moines. And check out ritualcafe.com.
Wow, some wedding.
Yeah, I've never seen a bride in coveralls.
Right, and skipping down the aisle to accordion music.
Not to mention the reception. That wedding cake was a freaking fruit cake.
It's your wedding. Don't leave anything to chance. Diana's Wedding Cakes. Using only the finest, freshest ingredients with free on-time delivery and setup. Choose one of Diana's custom designs or create your own. Call Diana's Wedding Cakes, 641-275-9279. That's 641-275-9279.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Welcome back, folks. Thanks for sticking with us. And Phil Rader, my guest today. We're talking about education. I want to thank Pumptown for that tune to kick us off, and I want to thank Ritual Cafe for sponsoring this segment of our program. Again, I want to thank all the folks who turned out for the Lawsuits Are No Laughing Matter comedy show last night. Some fantastic local talent, but Lee Camp, his first ever show in Iowa. The guy is sensational. If you've not heard Lee Camp, and I've heard his moments of clarity, his little videos. I saw him briefly in New York at an Occupy event, but to see him live at the House of Bricks for a full hour, just hammering from one issue to another, the guy's brilliant, and he's talented as all get out. And I hope we can bring him back here soon. Again, I really appreciate him taking the time and effort to do this, because I need all the help I can get in my lawsuit, defending myself against the lawsuit filed by Congressman Boswell. So, which again, to my shock and amazement, has not been withdrawn. At this point, I just don't understand what's to be gained by continuing that, except maybe some of Boswell's lawyers are making good money. Anyway, back to the conversation about education. Phil, the Des Moines district came under fire a little bit lately for threatening, may I say, to schedule a snow day on Martin Luther King Day. What do you think about that?
Well, hindsight's perfect, and it was a mistake. And it was a mistake that got fixed, thankfully. It got fixed quickly. In fact, it's one of those things, to go back a step in terms of the calendar for a school district, because it sounds like it ought to be a simple thing, but it takes time to do that. They're usually done a year and a half in advance. And in the case of this past calendar, it was decided by some folks that we're going to observe MLK Day, we're going to observe President's Day as well, with the caveat being that those will be a snow makeup day, and the goal being try to get school done by May 31st.
Right.
Well,
you see the political problem.
Yeah, it's one of those things that might have made for a better book than a movie. It might have sound good when you're talking about it, but it was just simply the wrong idea.
But it ain't happening.
It's not happening. Martin Luther King Day on the 21st, as well as President's Day next month, February 18th, are both no school days. There's no school for students, no school for teachers. Interestingly enough, a few minutes before we started this conversation, I was reading a story on my phone from the Cedar Rapids Gazette. The school board in Cedar Rapids, at their meeting tonight, the superintendent's going to announce that they're also not having school on Martin Luther King Day. They did the exact same thing as we did here in Des Moines. It was going to be an off day, with the caveat being that it was going to be a snow makeup day.
My guess is that won't happen again.
Probably not. Nor should it.
Hey, another issue. A lot of attention last week about the Business Summit for Education Reform, and some of us having concern about business getting too involved with education, because I mean, my feeling is education should be about learning a broad range of things that are important to, how you function in the world, but also developing our thinking skills. And some are concerned that, we'll get too much involvement in the business community and it starts becoming more like a job training program.
Sure. And on the one hand, I mean, I think all of us in education welcome as much help as we can get from people out there that want to get involved and discuss it, no matter who they are or what they do. But at the same time, you make a good point. The business of education is education, and our students go off to do a million different things when they graduate from Des Moines public schools, whether it's going to work at a business, a company, starting their own business, going on to grad school, going into medicine, going into the sciences, just pick a career, and a student from Des Moines Public Schools is doing it somewhere. And so I think we do need to remember that our students aren't just about getting a job the minute they walk across the stage. In fact, our part of our mission at Des Moines Public Schools is we talk about preparing students for the next stage of their life.
Right.
Whatever it is that they want to go on to. So, is it great that people everywhere are talking about education? Of course, and we want our allies, but I think we need to realize at the end of the day that our students are going to do a lot of different things when they're done with school, and we need to be diverse enough in what we offer to help them prepare.
And again,
whatever that might be.
Yeah, again, I don't think it's wrong for the business community to want to be involved in helping support our schools, but if they start dictating the direction and the program, that would be a problem.
Yeah, I think that's a fair question.
Let me. I want to get a bunch of things in before we have to wrap it up. Real briefly, are there any other legislative issues that you feel are a priority to the Des Moines Public School District?
Well, one of the things that we're really focusing on this year, and it's something that echoes what the Urban Education Network is also looking at, is how school districts, especially large, diverse school districts like Des Moines and some others across the state, can be provided with greater flexibility. In other words, a system of waivers for school districts where every state regulation that's put in place might not apply if it doesn't make sense. I can give you an example, a couple different examples. One is right now it's wrong for an 8th grade student to take high school math and get high school credit for it. Now, to us, we have a lot of 8th grade students that are taking high-level courses in mathematics and other subjects here in Des Moines through Central Academy and other opportunities. If they're smart enough, talented enough to take a high-level course, they ought to get credit for it.
Right.
But the state right now has a problem with that.
So maybe you're asking for less state meddling and more local autonomy.
A little more autonomy. One of the debates that's been on again, off again over the years has been Dillon's rule versus home rule. Communities in Iowa, cities, municipalities have home rule. Basically, they can do whatever they want unless the state says they can't do it. It's the opposite for school districts. We have Dillon's rules, which says we can't do what isn't in the state law. And so I think the balance a lot of us in education are trying to find right now is where's the right place between telling a school, the state or federal government, telling a school district what you need to achieve and telling you how you achieve it. You can't necessarily have both and be successful. It's one thing to tell you, here's your goal. You need to graduate X% of students or whatever the target might be, and then let a school and a district decide this is what works for us.
Well, yeah, and if it doesn't work, the voters in that district will vote out the school board.
They'll make a change and say we.
You know, it just seems like that's something that Republicans in particular, and Democrats as well, ought to be on board.
Well, I hope so, and it's something that we think with the approach we're taking, talking about greater use of waivers, is a good middle ground between the Dillon's rule that we have in place now and giving school districts complete home rule, which may raise some questions about going too far. I mean, I think what we're proposing finds a balance between appropriate state oversight, and we should make sure that our schools in Iowa are equitable across the board as much as possible.
Right.
But at the same time, given that autonomy, that flexibility at the local level to meet the needs, it might be unique here in Des Moines compared to Waukee or Ankeny or other districts across the state.
So you're the school district right now is continuing to defend itself against a lawsuit filed by the American Civil Liberties Union and a former school board member over open records relevant to the Nancy Sebring debacle. Can I call it a debacle?
Your word.
I think it's called case, but anyway, and I don't want to dwell too much on this, but how do you respond to folks who are saying there's not enough information being forthcoming about this?
I'm hearing from a lot of folks that said maybe there's too much information out there on this. I'll use your word, debacle, if you want to call it that. As far as the lawsuit's concerned, I mean, as you know, Ed, I'm not going to say much about it because A, it's in litigation right now in court, and B, it pertains to a closed session meeting of the board. So I have to respect that. When the suit was filed back in September, we said at that time it didn't have any merit, and let's just say our opinion about it hasn't changed since. We believe that the school district appropriately followed the law as it pertained to a closed session to discuss personnel matters. It's before a judge now, and hopefully here soon we'll hear back from her, and whatever the ruling is, we'll abide accordingly.
So it may be done and behind you pretty soon.
We hope.
Okay.
But
And the
we'll
other
see.
thing that might be done behind you pretty soon is a search for a new superintendent. I know some people were concerned when it was said that we should be searching for somebody who has kind of a CEO type, a business type approach. And I'm thinking, well, why not get somebody who knows students, knows education, I mean, I look at the guy you've got right now as an interim director. I mean, he's got, 20 plus years in the Des Moines district. You know, I mean, sometimes maybe it makes sense to search far and wide, but is there not plenty of talent and plenty of options right here in the district of people who could do a good job in that position?
There is, and I think people from the district are probably most likely will apply and be considered. I went through this, as you may remember, 6 years ago when I was on the board, and we did the superintendent search at that point in time. And I'd always talk about doing a national search, making the point that last time I checked a map, Des Moines in the nation. And so I think people will, they'll look far and wide, but they'll look close.
Well, that's cute, but what does that mean, Des Moines in the nation?
Well, it means that if there's a qualified applicant that the board receives for the position, I think they'll be given every consideration.
But I mean,
one of our finalists 6 years ago was somebody from the district that had been here a long time. The board at that time decided to go a different direction.
That was Ms. Lane, I believe. Right?
Yes, Linda Lane. So
maybe that would have been a better choice, huh?
Well,
who knows?
Hindsight is what it is. I wouldn't go so far as to say that, but some might. The school board, I believe it's February 11th is the deadline for people to apply for the position. So after that point, the board will have a good sense of the pool of applicants to look at. And it'll be sometime probably in mid-March that we'll have a good idea of who the next superintendent might be, or at least who the 2 or 3 finalists that are getting the closest look are.
I mean, I look at Eric Witherspoon, and I don't know how you feel about Eric Witherspoon, but I had a lot of trouble with the way he took the local option sales tax money and used it to demolish neighborhood schools. And I never had trouble with Nancy Sebring, but obviously there have been problems with her. Maybe it's time to look closer to home and hire somebody who's got deep roots in the community. And even though, sometimes I guess you could argue that somebody from outside could bring a new perspective, maybe it'd be great to try somebody who's got that local feeling and that local background. Just my thought for what it's worth.
Absolutely. I'll let you argue your case to the school board.
All right. Well, I might do that. Yeah. I might argue my case to the school board. All right. So, I'm curious. Chet Culver is making noise about running for governor. I know you're no longer. I know you worked with him for a while, and that's not really your purview anymore. But just curious. As they say in Iowa Press, no edition of Iowa Press would be complete without some talk of politics.
We're shifting gears here, yeah.
And so, I'd like to say the same for the Fallon Forum. I mean, Braley got quite a spread in the Des Moines Register this weekend.
He did, and as he should have. A sitting member of Congress has got to be a very, very serious, credible candidate for governor, no matter where they are. And Bruce Braley, somebody I admire a lot. I don't know him well, but from what I know of him and the work I've seen, I do admire him a lot. I think any party. I mean, the Republican Party is going through this debate nationally, but whether it's local, state, or national, you need to look forward in terms of your positions as well as who your candidates are. I hope there's a good group of candidates that are looking to run for governor on the Democratic side. Obviously, we don't know what Governor Branstad's plans are for the future. One day it sounds like he may run for re-election, but other times maybe someone else is being groomed.
He is toying with us.
So
I've all along thought he would not run again, but I'm not sure I'd want to bet money on that.
Yeah, and of course, it's January 2013, and so a lot can happen. Old friend.
Well, it won't be very long before we start seeing momentum, and because the primary is a little over a year away.
Yep, and I think there's a lot. Iowa is one of the states. I think, if I remember right, it's us in Mississippi or us in Alabama that have never elected a woman to governor.
Mississippi,
which not good company unless you want to compare yourself to Mississippi. Never elected a woman to governor or Congress.
Or the U.S. Senate.
It's long overdue that's changed, and I think there's some terrific Democrats
you mean like
in the legislature.
Kim Reynolds?
Well, on the Republican side, yes. I think you're looking at somebody like, I'm a big fan of Janet Peterson. I think somebody like her would be terrific. Pam Yoakum, Liz Mathis from Cedar Rapids. I think there are a lot of...
and she's very new, of course.
Very new, but...
So
a lot of people are,
yeah, so
are new and
you
can
for one would
succeed in
not mind
politics.
you would not mind a spirited Democratic primary.
I would not.
But if Culver, do you think Culver should throw his hat in the ring, or has that been said and done?
I think it's up to him.
Yeah, of course it is.
I mean, he's got to make that decision. It's. I don't
do you think
he'd
be a good candidate? Or has he kind of shown that he can't take the heat against Branstad?
I think the question for Governor Culver, and let me just make it clear, and this should be no surprise, I got a lot of respect for him and admiration for having worked with him and for him. I think the question for him is if he learned from the last go-around how to do it better and differently. Yeah, I think that's the biggest question that people are probably asking him, and that he'll need to address himself. If so, then hop in the water is probably fine. If not, I think he just it needs to be more than a rerun. I think Governor Culver would need to show here's how I'm going to do things differently. Now, some people pointed out Bill Clinton did that in Arkansas when he lost.
That's true. He lost and then came back.
Came back. He learned.
Branstad did it. Well, Branstad didn't lose. He just retired and then came back.
And then came back. But I think Bill Clinton's probably the best model in terms of a governor who lost, admitted that he made mistakes, learned from them, how he was going to address how he'd do things differently, came back and won. Yeah. So there's a model out there. It's not easy, but there is a model out there that he can look at.
Yeah. Personally, I think if Braley runs, you'll see a very small field in the primary. Maybe no one. If Culver runs, I think you'll see a lot more people running. But we'll see. It's all too early. Phil, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Phil Rader, Des Moines Public Schools. Tomorrow, folks, we're going to talk about gun violence, media violence, and the need for more mental health treatment. In the wake of the Sandy Hook massacre, there's a lot of conversation about what the appropriate response is relevant to guns, and I'm going to have Lars Pearson will join me, Kim Holding will join me. I'm hoping to line up another guest or two to make this conversation diverse, because I personally, I feel we need to attack this problem on multiple fronts. Some people feel you got to go after the guns. Some feel you got to go after the media violence. Some feel the focus should be on mental health. We'll talk about that tomorrow, folks. And tomorrow's show will be rebroadcast from Ames, KHOI 89.1 on Wednesday at 4 p.m. I'm excited as all heck to be back on the radio at least one day a week. It's a good start. So tomorrow's conversation again about guns and violence, and we'll be rebroadcasting that on Wednesday on KHOI 89.1. Again, I want to thank you all for taking the time to listen. I want to thank Webcast One Live. I want to thank Ritual Cafe for sponsoring this segment of our program. Ritual is an all-vegetarian menu at 13th and Locust, right across from the backside of the Sculpture Garden. And they've got, from my point of view, some of the best tea in Des Moines, a great ambiance, and a lot of great home-baked goods as well. And if you like coffee, some people out there still drink coffee. I know, not me. If you like coffee, I hear the coffee is absolutely fantastic. Anyway, folks, we'll be back tomorrow. Stay tuned for Bradshaw. Bradshaw's back on the air. He'll be with you at 1:30, and I'll be back with you tomorrow at noon. I want to thank Maddie Arrington and Chris DeBolt for helping to put together the production of the show. Talk to you tomorrow.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends.
All right.
I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershot.
I'm administrative manager.
I am the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
If we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be, it's your home.
It's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're going to do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's going to be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're going to do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed right or it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you going to say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're going to be listening. They're going to want to know what your challenges are. Then they're going to come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me, but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though, I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm gonna take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
Enough said.